Talking to business fans, big week for us, KC&JP show, but this is not about KC&JP this week. We are honored and privileged to have one of the legends of the Kentucky, Indiana area, the SMPW heavyweight champion himself, the face of UWA, and the head trainer of UWA right now. Yes. Apollo's up in the house. Apollo, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, we get to talk the business, and that's always the best thing. For those of you who maybe don't watch UWA, and I know the name Apollo is kind of famous around the area, but we're talking about someone who was trained by Vic the Bruiser, came up around 95, so we're talking about almost 20 years in the industry now. And, wow, you talk about 1995, getting into the business, but even before that, there has to be a moment where I think that all wrestlers, they are younger and they see that one thing they remember that goes, okay, now that's what I want to do. So, Apollo, for you, what was that moment?
I guess that moment was when I was a kid. I had never watched wrestling. Then one night I had a sleepover, and a buddy of mine, we were hanging out, eating Fruity Pebbles, and he goes, let's watch wrestling. I'm like, wrestling, what's that? He goes, you've never watched it? So we changed it over on the old Wave 3, and there was championship wrestling. And from that moment, I was hooked. I actually saw Bill Dundee, smallest guy on the roster, beating up everybody. And the move that caught it for me was the sunset flip. Here this little bitty guy jumping over giants. And automatically I was hooked. I wanted to be that guy because growing up, I was one of the smallest kids.
Okay.
I got picked on, last to be picked at sports. So being the smallest, I had to prove something each and every day. So when seeing Bill Dundee and seeing this little guy do all these things, I was hooked. It was instant. I never missed an episode every Saturday morning. And then when wrestling started becoming a little more mainstream, and we were getting other wrestling promotions in the area and televised, I got to see Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson. Now all of a sudden, here are people I can relate to.
Okay.
These are guys of my race, my ethnicity, and they're champions. People are cheering for them. They're chanting them.
Most definitely.
So now all of a sudden, I look at the little guy who's always there for the fight to these two giant monsters and the entire arena. Because, Saturday morning wrestling, they were in that little bitty TV studio that probably, if you were lucky, held 40 people. To these WWF shows that were holding thousands. And they were chanting for Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas. And then, as through the 80s and early 90s, this market, this Louisville area was bombarded with wrestling shows. I remember on a Saturday, I could watch Channel 3 wrestling, go outside and hang with my friends, 6 o'clock, pick up TBS, and then there were like 5 or 6 other wrestling promotions that ran smaller TV shows after that.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I got to see guys like I'd never seen before in my life. Vic Steamboat. I got to see Randy Savage cut a promo where he's running through the park at breakneck speed, and they would advertise him as being a former catcher for the Cincinnati Reds. These are things that hooked me. There are Prince Michael Lua. I'm thinking of the Von Erichs. I saw a world-class show where they actually did a show in its giant cage structure on the track of a demolition derby.
Yes.
It was like 3 cages here, 3 cages here, and you had to fight your way literally all the way to the bottom while the demolition derby was going on. This is the stuff that made professional wrestlers, to me, superheroes.
Oh, most definitely. And most people know that, I grew up in El Paso, Texas, so I remember very vividly that first morning watching World Class. Terry Gordy hits the ring, and I'm scared. But it was the emotion of that moment that goes, okay, well, I've got to see what happens. And then when you talk about it bombarding from that moment, I still remember the first time I saw AWA on ESPN 3 o'clock when you get out of school, and here's this wild, crazy, and we now know half-blind man called Stan Hansen whirling around the bell and just beating the hell out of everyone. And you go, oh my God, these are moments that just kind of sink in.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful thing. It really is.
I remember when they did Wrestle Rock.
Oh,
and
that's old school now.
And they were shooting a video, and Greg Gagne does a rap where he goes, "I'm Greg Gagne and I'm in a rage. I want to get the Sheik in a cage." That was the corniest thing as an adult I've ever heard in my life. But as a kid growing up watching wrestling, I wanted to see it. I wanted more.
Oh yeah, most
You know,
definitely.
And I look at the first time I saw the Fabulous Ones, how I was hooked on these two bleach blonde guys with brown mustaches. And everybody always captivates on that one video where them two are working out in the banana hammocks in the fitness club.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
But I remember their intro, their very first time they were unleashed on Channel 3 Wrestling, and the lights were flashing, and you hear that dun 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 dun. As a kid, I was so enthralled with these guys. I was like, if the Fabulous Ones lost, my Saturday morning was ruined. I didn't want to leave the house. I just wanted to sit there. You can't do it to Stan and Steve. I was like, I was on a first name basis with these guys. And then as, like I said, progressing and watching other wrestling programs, I saw the LOD. And if you have never seen the Legion of Doom,
Them hit the ring. It was so magical.
It was, time stopped.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Every fan stopped and watched these guys.
And I got to bring this up before we go into any of the subjects, but when you talk about LOD, you got to talk about Scaffold Match, NWA, Midnight Express with Jim Cornette. That night, that moment, when you talk about the Legion of Doom, and of course, you know, we're talking about the greatest tag team of all time. I don't care what anybody says. To me, that was their defining moment. That was a moment I would go, wow, breathtaking. I've never even thought of anything as a scaffold match, but when you watch that, that's just magic all to itself.
I remember when they did the promo and they had the stock photography picture of Jim Cornette going feet first off the scaffold, eyes closed tight, and just going.
Most definitely. Okay, so we're talking 20 years, and now you're in a position in your career where you get to give back as a trainer. And I think that's something that's, wow, you know, again, when you have the love for the business, to be able to give back is something really special. So let's talk about what you teach in the ring. I mean, what do you focus on when a guy comes to you and he goes, man, I love pro wrestling, whether it be because of The Rock or Austin or whatever they saw in the 90s. What do you want to emphasize with them?
I want to emphasize everybody has their heroes. Because I've heard 1,000 times, I want to be like The Rock. I want to be like this. I've got a student right now, I'm not going to say his name, but he wanted to be like Corey Graves. And I'm like, who the hell is Corey Graves? He goes, he's an announcer now. So I'm like, you want to be an announcer? He goes, no. When he was in the ring, I wanted to be like him. So I'm like, I want you to be the first you. We all have somebody we want to be like. I'm never going to be Tony Atlas. And coming from a guy who was a former bodybuilder, I'm never going to have that body. I'm not going to be 6'4". I stopped growing at 5'10". And I'm 5'10" wearing shoes with platforms. So I want you to look up to somebody, emulate somebody, but I want you to be the first you. Because there's 1,000 guys out there that know John Cena's moveset. They knew Austin's moveset. But I want 1,000 guys to know your moveset. I want 1,000 guys to be like you. You know, this is what we teach. We teach respect. We teach the basics. I was brought up, and when I came up, I wasn't allowed in the locker room. I changed in my car. Once I was allowed to get in the ring, I ran the ropes until my legs gave out.
And I shouldn't laugh at that, folks. I do apologize, but when you hear these stories of the way it was back then, it has changed so much.
I remember being the only trainee after all other trainees were run off. to break a ring down, to set a ring up. You know, if they could give a degree in putting up rings, I'd have a master's.
There you go.
No one is above sweeping. No one is above helping keep the arena clean. This is how we learn. You know, I've met young men who didn't understand the philosophy of putting the ring together. I'm just going to sit here and wait till the ring's up. No, we all do it together. I do it. My assistant trainer, Brad Zilla, does it. The other guys from UWA who are established, who help come and train, they do it. If you can't respect the small details, how are you going to respect the people who came before you? Or better yet, the people who are paying to see you? This is a business based on respect and love. If you don't respect it and you don't love it, why are you doing it?
And I cannot agree with you more. And some of the things you're discussing, fans, if you haven't started watching the WWE Network show Breaking Ground, which might be the best show on TV, YouTube, whatever right now. It was just 2 weeks ago. They go into a very segment. These are the top indie guys in business, and you're watching them doing house shows, and they're out there building the ring. They're carrying the equipment in. These are guys that don't have to be with WWE, can make a nice lifestyle for themselves, going back to the basics, because there is an emphasis in training now to go back to the basics, to teach the old school way. And I think it's really important.
A few years back, I had the luxury and the opportunity to do an NWA convention show down in Nashville. And this is at the time when we were still treating the NWA, and there were different territories and different guys coming in from all over the country. I was representing NWA Main Event out of Nashville. There were guys from Hawaii, Connecticut. Great story on a side note. As we're all checking into the hotel, I happened to be behind two gentlemen from NWA Hawaii. Never met them before a day in my life. And we automatically start talking. And we're laughing and joking, and the word brother got thrown around a lot because that's how we address one another. So when I got to, me and my wife and had our turn to get to check in, we found the two ladies at the front counter playing a game called Guess Where the Wrestlers Were From. So since I was going brother and laughing with these two guys from NWA Hawaii, I was automatically from NWA Hawaii. And I was like, no ma'am, I was born actually in Munfordville, Kentucky. But thank you nonetheless, you know. But even at that convention, and we were showcasing the NWA National Heavyweight Champion, the NWA North American Heavyweight Champion, and really pushing and building the NWA, we were all there putting the ring up. We were all there setting each other's tables up, talking to one another. We all had respect and love for the business. You know, there's a quote: if you're in this business to make money, you're a fool. If you're in this business not to make any money, you're still a fool. I do this not because of this, because all this is an extra 20 pounds I have to carry. I do this for the love of the crowd. You know, a guy taught me a long time ago, and forgive me if I get sentimental or even a little teary-eyed right now.
Not at all.
It doesn't matter how you feel when the match is over. You know, he said he was hurt, he could hardly stand. It took everything in his power to walk back to the locker room, and a little kid ran up and grabbed his hand. And he said, for that moment, I didn't feel anything except for what that kid felt. And I've been lucky enough to, and if you'll excuse me, I get a little misty-eyed when I tell that story. I'm lucky enough that I've experienced that. You know, when my kids were little, because now my kids are all grown and wise to the business, I would do a match and my daughters would run over and they cheer, they try to help daddy up. Or I've got a picture of my son. My son's a grown man, actually just graduated from college. And I'm holding this most audacious title. I mean, this thing has got to be, this is the most huge title belt I've ever seen in my life. And my son's holding it up, and all you can see is his face and his calves. This belt is so big. And I'm sitting behind him. But, it was those moments that I can look at and share them with my children. And now I can share them with complete strangers. I'm sitting right here with the S&PW title, and the moment I won this, I could hear every single person in the crowd. Normally, and later on, we talk to Bradzilla, he'll tell you, we can't hear anything on the rank when it's time. I can't hear anything. I'm focused on what I'm doing, but that moment, and it's really funny because I've held titles in more places I can count. Hell, I was me and my cousin JB Thunder, we joke we were 80-time tag team champions. Every place we went, we held the tag team titles.
There you go.
But I heard everybody, and I heard little kids screaming. I heard adults talking, picking their kids up, and we were all sharing that moment together. And that's, what a lot of people fail to realize in this business. In this business, sometimes we are a family's only entertainment. We are that one thing they might be able to do just one time a month because dad, mom are busting their asses at keeping a roof over the kid's head, food on the table, and that one Saturday, Sunday, Friday night, whenever, they can do something as a family and they choose to come see us.
It's an amazing fit. It really, really is. And that kind of leads into the next question because, again, starting where you did and where we're going now, to you, what is the biggest difference 1995 to 2015? I know for me being a mark, a fan, whatever you want to call it, I feel like the smaller guy is now in a position like they've never been before. Whether you want to talk about a Finn Balor, an Adam Cole, a Kyle O'Reilly, guys in that 5'11", 6 foot, 185 to 200 pound, where in 1995 they can't get a gig with WCW, WWE. Now they're the face of companies. So to me, that's the biggest change. But for you being in the business, what's the biggest change?
We are no longer in that cookie cutter mode. When I first started watching wrestling, wrestlers were all different shapes and sizes. Phil Hickerson had never seen the inside of a gym.
It is live. It is live. That means all you young ones out there, please go YouTube it, go check it out. But anyway, go ahead.
And then there were other guys. Denny Brown, junior heavyweight champion, was a professional truck driver by trade. Denny Brown probably never went to the gym. I heard he missed a booking one night because he was driving his truck. But we went from when I started seeing all these guys different shapes and sizes, Kamala, Bill Dundee, to your Jeff Gaylords who had that bodybuilder physique, to the 90s where everybody looked like they lived, breathed, slept in the gym.
Most definitely.
To now where we're going back to, it's all different shapes and sizes. Yes, no one comes to see the guy who has no conditioning fall over and be exhausted in the first 10 seconds of a match. But it's more believable. If you look at when me and Bradzilla tag together, Bradzilla is very tall.
Okay.
We have to complement each other because here's a guy who's probably around 6'4", 6'5", and like I said, in platforms I'm 5'10". But it's still believable.
Oh, most definitely. You can look at that with NXT and Enzo and Kaz. You're talking about someone who's maybe 5'9", someone who's 6'7", and you go, well, that doesn't work. And then you watch them in the ring and you watch the development over the past couple of years, and you go, not only does that work, it's fun. It's entertaining. Their characters and the way they develop it in such a way that you love the fact that Kaz can pick up Enzo and throw him off the top like a basketball and watch him flop down. It actually works, where you're right. 90s, I don't think that works whatsoever. So, well, I want to lighten it up, and again, we're talking 20 years. I want to know the biggest rib one of your trainees has gotten on you. Now, for those of you, like I said, I now we go in backstage a little bit, but there's got to be that one trainee that got you good, Apollo.
I can't say out of any of my trainees have really gotten me good. I think they're still at the time right now that they're worried about what I'm going to do to them later on. Because, with our training sessions, we not only concentrate on learning the business, training in the ring, but we also work on conditioning. Conditioning is one of the biggest things that we preach.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong, I've seen some great ribs in the business.
I can imagine the stories
I've
you
seen
have.
Things that I can't even say now because there might be a child.
No X-ray. No X-ray, please.
The greatest rib I probably ever saw was a gentleman who was about to be arrested. The police were at the building, and they said his name. They said his name again. He had time to put on a mask, his hood, walk right past them. They asked him, had they seen this guy? He went, no, and kept walking, got in his car, and drove away. I'm like, in a million years, I couldn't pull that off.
No.
They would know what I look like, what tattoos I have, who I rode with, and waiting at me at the city limits. So, I look at things like that, and I can look back and I can smile and I can laugh about some of the great things I've seen. And one of our favorite ribs is that always we tell everybody, don't leave your cell phone laying out.
Oh, gosh. That's any company.
Your cell phone is laying out, you're fair game. We were up in Evansville, and a young man left his cell phone out. Well, his wife got a picture of one of the boys, completely naked and tucked. Sent to her phone and made into his screensaver.
Oh, now this was pre-Seth Rollins and all that stuff, so you can only imagine what the woman went through. And, I think the biggest thing to take out of this is, wrestling, for whether you're a fan or a mark or in the business, it's a moment. And they're about moments and things you can really cherish and just really enjoy. Everyone who watches the show knows I'm a complete story guy. So to me, whether it be Chi-Town Heat 87, Steamboat Flair, and that moment at the end of the match, or the end of the boyhood dream being finally taken care of with Brett and Shawn back in WrestleMania. The stories that got me involved, those were moments that I don't forget. You guys have moments you don't forget, and that's what this is all about. It's just a moment in time where you don't forget those things and how they touch you here.
Yes.
And it has been an absolute honor, having you here. So I want to give you an opportunity. If you're a young gentleman, woman, and you want to get in the business, you're in the Indiana, Kentucky area, I want to be trained by Apollo. How do I get a hold of you?
Well, you can always get a hold of me on Facebook.
Okay.
Or you can come to a UWA show. We're at the New Albany Production House, 1736 East Main Street. We run on Sundays.
Okay.
We train on Mondays.
Okay.
You can come to a show.
And I not trying to interrupt, January 17th, UWA Throwdown TV tapings. KC and JP are going to be there. We're looking forward to meeting everybody in the back, the fans. Come see us. We're proud to be able to be part of the show, so please go ahead.
But definitely, you can always reach me on Facebook. I've had a blue million guys contact me, and a handful show up. And right now, here's the time, if you're listening, if you're watching, I want to be honest with you. This is going to be the toughest thing you're ever going to do. And this is coming from a guy who was in the Army Reserves, played collegiate sports. This is the toughest thing you're going to do. This, because you see this. It's shiny, it's sparkly, and everybody wants something shiny and sparkly. But to get this, you're going to have to work. I thank you because you keep saying 20 years. You shaved a couple of years off, and that makes me feel really good. But I wouldn't trade the pain, the wear and tear for anything. My poor wife has had to spend her birthdays, anniversaries, Valentine's Days at shows.
And see, my wife gets stuck with me watching videos 5 days a week. I think if she sees one more Edge or Kevin Steen match, she might throw up at this point. So, trust me, she feels you now. She feels you.
She has to listen to when I'm beating myself up. Did this look right? How was the crowd? Like I said earlier, I don't hear the crowd when the match is going on. I'm concentrating on the match. So she's my eyes, she's my ears, she's also my production company. You know, she looks at all these little things that most people don't see. Mm-hmm. But going back to this and training, come to the New Albany Production House. I mean, come to a show, sit down. You can't experience the fun we have if you see it on television. You need to come there, sit down at the production house, watch the show. We, as the wrestlers there, we want to interact with everybody. That's why after the show, we talk to everybody.
And the house itself is very unique compared to where the stage you come down is and where the crowd is. It creates a very interactive environment that you don't see in a lot of indie shows. And I think that was something that me and my wife really took away going to our first show there, was that, wow, I'm sitting literally maybe as far away from the announce team. And then I'm watching where the stage is, and as soon as you come off that stage, if you're a babyface, you're right there to interact with the crowd. Yes. If you're a heel, before you get down the ramp, you know you're going to get booed out of that building, and you can't walk around the ring without getting booed. So it's very unique in that aspect.
You know, Lisa has told me that my voice carries. And before all UWA shows, we chant, and we scream, and we yell, and I ask the one question, who are we? And we respond, we're UWA. And I get louder, and I get louder. We were in other facilities where we were in the basement, and they could still hear it. We were at a skating rink, and we were upstairs above the ring, and they could still hear me yelling. At the production house, I guess because it is a music studio, my voice carries even more. You know, and I forget that we are televised. I'm so glad they don't play that part, because I am chanting, I am screaming, I am yelling, because I want everybody to give it their all, full cylinders. I treat shows the same way I treat wrestling class. You get it there, you give it your all. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to give it your all.
And that's a great way of... And I do want to squeeze in one more question, and I think it's important. Being around this area, and there's so many companies that are kind of up and coming and or have a lot of momentum right now. Whether you want to talk about KC&DAVE, whether you want to talk about SNPW, UWA, obviously Ohio Valley's had the biggest year it's had in probably 10 years this past year. So there's a lot of momentum going on. But let's really kind of sit in with UWA. What does 2016, what does it hold for UWA?
Surprises.
That's always a fun thing.
So it's a fun thing. And then you touch base with SNPW, which is out of Crossville, Illinois. More surprises. When you have guys like myself, the young man you're going to talk to later, Bradzilla, a couple of young guys that were training by the name of Jay King and Johnny Burroughs.
And I've seen Burroughs. Very impressed. Very impressed.
It's a roller coaster ride with us. We ride together. We train together. Hell, me and Bradzilla lift weights together. We have a day what we call a Bad Wrestling Day. And we have a channel, an independent wrestling channel, and we just pick wrestling shows from around the country, around the nation, and we turn on and go, oh, these guys have great production. We don't want to watch this. We want to watch the guys who are in somebody's barn doing the show. We watched the one show, and whenever they did the big pinfall and the guy would kick out, they flash across the screen 2.9. That's when the guy kicked out. That's the show I
want to watch. A hood slam show? My God.
That's the shows we want to watch. But it surprises us. It's still fun to us. And that's what 2016 is going to hold for the companies I work for. UWA, SNPW, it's surprises.
And I, like I said, just being new to the area, but to be able to enjoy this and watch this growth right now has been absolutely amazing. Fans, this has been an honor. I can honestly say in the year I've been doing this, whether it be with Book of the Territory, Powerbomb Nation, and now obviously KC&JP Talking the Business. This has been probably the most nervous I've been going into a show, but at the same time, the most heartfelt that I've just really, really enjoyed this. So, Apollo, we want to thank you so much. Fans, if you like this, my gosh, you know how to hit us up on the, as Jericho would say, the Twitter, KCJPTTB20161. Instagram, yes, we have Instagram now. Don't ask me what it is. Thank God I have my wife running this. KCJPTTB. YouTube, obviously, we're going to watch this on YouTube. Guys, get on there, enjoy it, share it, subscribe. You know, it's a wonderful, wonderful time to be a fan of wrestling. Whether you watch the major products, whether you watch the independents, the growth of the independents over the next year is unbelievable. After a big 2015, 2016 is only going to get bigger. And how do we start off the new year? The living legend right here in the area, Apollo.